Welcome back to FreightWaves. Now you just got your first look at Anthony's new show, Economy Lately. I loved it. That was my first look at it as well. You have an infectious laugh. It's a good way to end on it. I absolutely loved it. Thanks for that. What do we have today?
Of course. So with the economy lately, one of the things we're talking about was prices and inflation and things like that. That's happening upstream. We talked about upstream yesterday. We're going to look a little bit further downstream now. And so what we have here is our total housing starts within the U.S., and that's showing one of the areas that's really been quite inflated. A lot of run-ups into people going into home ownership, not just this year, but really throughout the pandemic. They never really took any kind of lapse. And a lot of people think of construction and how it relates to freight, and of course, those movement of those building product materials, the movement of lumber, siding, anything like that, as the end of it. But there's a lot more that goes into it, not just these new home sales starts that move into those flatbed volumes, but there's downstream effects as well.
Yeah, you got to think about when you have a slowing down of housing starts, you have a potential for less appliances to be shipped, less furniture to be shipped. There's so many things that go into new homes that also move on a truck that people don't think about. They think of just the lumber and the commodities that are needed to build the home.
That's exactly right. I think we have some of that in our next chart here. When we're looking at those things that move into the home, it's really interesting to see how those are going to be impacted by employment. So I always say that an employed consumer is a confident consumer, and a confident consumer is a spending consumer. And so one of the areas that I've always been suspicious about, I'm sure you've heard me talk about it when we used to do those midday market updates, is those weekly unemployment numbers and those weekly initial jobless claims that we saw in the latest edition are having an exponential, I wouldn't say exponential, but a consistent downward trend. And that's what we've been wanting to see for some time. And we've seen pandemic lows time and time after again, week after week.
Yeah, it's a good sign. Are you still suspicious? Are you seeing these as good signs? What are your thoughts on some of the things that we'd spoken about in the midday market update about misclassifications and some of those things that you spoke about in Economy Lately?
For sure. I think there's still a lot of details that need to just be really parsed out. I think there's still going to be some misclassifications. Workers that maybe they're returning to an industry that isn't quite as robust as it used to be, but there are still a lot more job openings that are happening right now. I mean, there is a big demand for labor, but there's that conflict right now on, do I go back to work, or am I going to make just about the same amount on these bonus unemployment benefits that are still lasting through, I think, September, October? Now, we did hear a statement from President Biden that there's going to be intense, I would guess, regulations on being able to prove that you are actively looking for work and that you're just not sitting at home or traveling the world collecting these unemployment checks. And so that's going to be one of the things we have to look at is what are those incentives that these would-be employees are getting to not return back to the workforce?
I mean, this is something I see anecdotally, at least, looking at driving up and down the street at every restaurant, every bar. Everybody's hiring. They can't seem to find enough people to serve those jobs. And I mean, I think it certainly has to do with the unemployment benefits that are coming in. It's going to take some time for those people to re-enter the market. Do you expect to see any tapering off of those benefits after the September, or do you think that will kind of be a hard stop?
I think we need to see a taper off. I would love to see a hard stop because there's no longer a need. I think the reality is there should be a significant taper, so maybe a little bit of both, but there should be a significant taper because that's going to be incentivization, if that's a word, to return back to the workforce. And so that's one of the things that we're going to need to kind of use to spur back into the economy, especially as we've seen the aggressive vaccine efforts within the U.S. I think we can kind of see what's happening in our next chart here. With those aggressive vaccine efforts, we are still seeing that there's a lot of consumption, and that consumption is going to really maintain its pace. I know one of the things that we mentioned, that you at least mentioned, is that shift from so many goods to services, and I think that's going to be a significant part of our recovery is not just goods, but also services. But those goods are now at a new high, especially for this chart here. We see retail sales for non-store retailers and how it kind of impacts those freight volumes. It adds to those freight volumes, and so with increased consumption, there's going to be increased freight volumes. And so with that, that means that the U.S. itself is going to be consuming more goods. Other countries aren't really at our levels just yet when it comes to the vaccine efforts, and they might not be up to par for producing the amount of goods that we're consuming. And that's going to cause a strain not only in the supply chain, but really in being able to supply Americans with our ever-growing appetite for consumption.
I see. So have we, it's obviously a great thing that we've vaccinated 35% of the population, but you're saying that we've vaccinated so many people so fast that we've got to we need the rest of the country, the rest of our supply chain partners to catch up and get back on our level so that we can ensure to have good, continuous product flow.
Exactly. And so because of that, we can expect some inflation to come from that upstream, downstream with some of these products that might have a little bit slowing momentum and getting those goods produced, especially when you look at commodities that have been in shortages like semiconductors and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, across the board, commodities are up. I've seen that corn prices are at the highest point in many years, soybeans highest price, crude oil now approaching that. I mean, commodities across the board are up. Transportation prices are up. As you said it in Economy lately, if you want to look for inflation, it's all around us. It's coming to consumers, whether it be in the form of true inflation, where prices are getting marked up, or anecdotally, I've been seeing a lot of shrinkflation, where my dog food shrunk by 10 pounds but went up by $15. So we certainly have that on the board as well.